Marty here with Warehouse and Operations as a Career. I hope you've had a great and prosperous week so far. This week, let's look at the building maintenance side of warehousing. We've mentioned it a couple of times in previous episodes, and it's definitely a strong and stable department and really an excellent career path. In our production, distribution, and fleet arenas, it takes a strong maintenance department to really keep things up and running. The machinery, warehouse equipment, and tractors must stay up so the productivity can be maintained constantly. I've been fortunate to know several people that moved from warehousing, many that started in general labor positions and worked themselves through the task to technicians, maintenance leads, really directors and above. Today we'll hear from one such gentleman that started out in the military, right out of high school, passed through the warehousing to the maintenance world, and retired from a national distribution center as a director of building maintenance and fleet services. You know, building maintenance can cover many positions depending what industry you're actually working in. Today we'll try to talk to a couple of them, or really kind of several of them. Probably across a few different industries even. What you see at your facility may be different, of course, but the positions are really interesting to talk about and discuss. When one hears building maintenance, you may think of things like janitorial, plumbing, electrical, painting. There's a lot of painting that goes on. Furniture and carpets, building cubicles, taking cubicles down, things like that. And all that usually falls under them, but several others as well, like building security, all the warehouse equipment, havoc systems, heat and air, as well as the warehouse racking, dock doors, any trailer locking devices, really anything that's got moving parts or that can come apart. Building maintenance usually is responsible for taking care of it. In episode 11, we talked with a gentleman that started with a distribution center as general labor, and actually, after working his way through many different warehousing positions, ended up in the maintenance department, and that was something that he really enjoyed and actually was able to retire from. From what I've seen, those individuals that love working with their hands or really like mechanic type things, that's been hired in warehousing and notice positions within the maintenance world that they'd like, seem to really make great technicians. Now, of course, as we've learned from others, we'll need to be doing a great job at our assigned task, not have any kind of attendance problems, and make sure we're on our boss's radar as that person that communicates really well and is looking for advancement. So when we bring up our wishes, we can be considered for those positions or making that move. There are several entry-level positions in the field. I mentioned painting earlier. There's always a lot of painting, that needs to be done. Working with the racking, installing racks, changing bars, things like that. A lot of utility-type positions. Then there's the bit more skilled positions, I guess you could say, which may or may not require some type of training or certifications, like working with the electrical warehouse equipment, the pallet jacks, forklifts, conveyor machinery, things like that. We'd probably be starting off with changing load wheels and tires on equipment, maybe some switches, and working with the equipment batteries, things like that. Understand that there are several different articles, courses, and even certifications that's available online. Many that your company may be able to share with you and get you kind of set on that path, or give you the curriculum that we'll need anyway. One thing I learned many years ago was working with the garage type doors, the dock doors on the docks. If dealing with those springs, you'd better have a little bit of training before touching them. Those things are super dangerous. I've seen those things shoot all the way across the dock before, all the way down to the end. Of course, you have the havoc equipment, heating and air conditioning for the building. That's a great industry to get into, and of course comes with much more training and regulatory concerns. I know one gentleman that did just that. He was a general utility man, doing everything from hanging doors, installing locks, touch-up painting and such. He enrolled in school. The place that he was working actually paid for part of his tuition and books, and today he's a certified havoc technician. One of the best stories I've heard was a gentleman from Bosnia, and I was actually fortunate enough to know this gentleman pretty well, worked with him for a while. He started out in warehousing as a loader. He had an old beater car that he'd purchased to get back and forth to work with, and found that he really enjoyed working on it all the time. He'd been taking lunch with and asking the fleet mechanics questions now and then about, how to fix this or how to fix that with his car, and discovered that he really had a passion for working on engines. A long story short, he enrolled in a night tech school and became a diesel mechanic. Eventually opened his own repair shop, and he accomplished all of this in the course of probably 7 or 8 years. He came to the States, got a general labor job in warehousing, made some money while attending school, and ended up with a career in our industry. Another great success story, I met a gentleman last year that started out in a maintenance position, really a true utility position, generally cleaning out the evaporative cooling units at a facility. You may know them as swamp coolers. Those water pans can get nasty and pretty smelly at times. He worked his way up through several maintenance positions, transferred to the warehouse where he held a couple of different tasks and positions, really gaining experience in the field, and today he is the warehouse manager of that very facility that he started with. That's really another example of getting our foot in the door, taking advantage of every opportunity, being that employee that shows up to work every day, eager to learn, and is constantly reaching for something else, taking a job and turning it into a career. As I mentioned earlier, we're fortunate to have a retired director of building and fleet maintenance visiting with us today. I've known David for, 20, 25 years. David, thanks for taking a few minutes with us here at WAOC today, sir.
Well, I'm glad I can be available to get involved in this. It's a very interesting subject, and I appreciate you inviting me to be a part of it.
That's great, man. I tell you, we really enjoy all the visitors that we have. So tell us a little bit about your background or work history, David.
Well, I started out of high school. I went in the military, spent 4 years working on airplanes, and come out of the military and did some labor jobs, sprinkler company for fire sprinklers, and then I went to work for a cold storage warehouse. All they required was a guy that could turn a wrench. That was an ex-military. That's all they wanted. And that's when I got into the maintenance field. I worked for a warehouse. Then I worked for a food processing company. And then I went to work for the distribution warehouse. It was kind of in between pace, and it turned out pretty well. And I started out as a supervisor for the maintenance department and worked my way up to running 2 different departments and being responsible for several different areas of the facility besides the maintenance.
Wow, that is really interesting, David. So what all or what positions fall under building maintenance typically? And can you tell us a bit about the responsibilities of building maintenance?
Well, building maintenance is responsible for everything from the grass to the roof. That's the way I like to say it, and everything
so
in
true.
between.
Yeah, so true.
You've got, you take care of the outside, you've got janitorial, you've got each type of system that works. You have electrical systems, air conditioning systems, as you spoke of earlier, and refrigeration systems, depending on the size of the warehouse. And then you've got all the regulatory to go with that, and that you have to follow. It's an interesting job.
I bet it is. Earlier in the show, I shared a couple of stories of a few people I've known that moved within the company from warehousing to maintenance. Have you seen many instances of that? And do you feel warehousemen possess the skills and attributes that's really needed for maintenance?
Yes. I've had several that worked out well for me. I mean, you get a guy that wants to learn and wants to apply himself. In the maintenance field, there's plenty of opportunity for him because most places are trying to find just good workers, are willing to teach and educate their employees if they're just willing to learn and want to apply themselves.
Really true. We here at WAOC talk quite a bit about how we need to plan for that next promotion or position, kind of self-educate ourselves for that next step. Are there courses or opportunities that we can plan for on our own, or is it just we should be good with our hands and have kind of a mechanically inclined mind?
Well, there's several opportunities. work on the technical side, be it basic mechanics, specialize in HVAC. There's several technical schools out there. There's several courses on industrial refrigeration. There's courses at these tech schools for electrical training. I mean, there's several ways to do it. And like I said, a lot of companies are willing to get a guy that wants to do it and help him with his education through applying himself.
Those are great points. Do you have any advice or maybe really opinions that you could share with someone ready to make the change from warehouse to maintenance? Any pointers you could give us?
Well, like I said, the main thing, the guy's got to want to be a self-starter, because a lot of times in the maintenance industry, you're running your own self. You're told a task to do, and you got to be motivated enough to do it. And if you're motivated enough to work and get the job done and then be ready to move on to the next one, that gives you a chance for more advancement and an ability to move on in your career.
Very good advice. David, thank you so much for sharing your story and some thoughts with us today. I really enjoyed the visit, sir. It's very much appreciated.
Well, thank you, Marty. I do appreciate the opportunity to do this, and I hope there's some people out there that will take the advice that this program's offering and take advantage of it. It's a really interesting opportunity.
You bet. We're having a really good time. Maybe we could twist your arm when we get into some more building maintenance. Maybe you'd visit with us again?
Oh, yeah, more than welcome to. More than welcome.
And thank each of you for joining us today as well. If you have any questions about the opportunities within the building maintenance department, please email us at host@warehouseandoperationsasacareer.com, and I'll try to put you in touch with someone that could get those questions answered. Please leave us a comment or suggestion on our Twitter or Facebook feeds. Remember, participation is education. Let's wake up in the morning with a safety thought and share it with our teams.